For here. Okay, we'll call our meeting in order. We'll have a silent roll taking. Any board or ex officio member comments?
I don't know if you're all aware of Tracy Cravens from the theater company. She passed away unexpectedly. So they actually have a GoFundMe page to raise money to redo the seats in the auditorium there. So I was going to ask if the board was interested in contributing to that. And if so, how much? I think they're up to $5,000 or $6,000 right now.
That's great. I will say Tracy has been a huge supporter of our efforts and cross marketing and working with us on things, and obviously that project is very beneficial to not only downtown but the creative district. So I think it's a good idea.
Is there an amount you would recommend?
Well, I think we're about halfway there.
Yeah.
So, can you think of doing this before?
Did I think of doing
Can
this?
you think of us having done this before?
Oh, no.
The reason why I bring it up is in the city charter, the city cannot make donations. We can only give money in exchange for a service or something like that. So I'm not saying that means you fall under the same, but I don't know if there's a limitation like that.
Okay.
So it might be worth checking if we can commit.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we do that, and then we can see. I mean, we could purchase reupholstering of the
Usually we come
chairs.
up with some other
Yeah.
way to do something like
Okay.
that. So that we're making sure we're getting something like that.
Okay.
Rather than just giving money.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for the answer to that. I'll check into how much it costs, and then we can maybe see. I don't know how much it would cost, but what is a row or what is something like that, and maybe it could be in exchange for something. So, all right. Thank you, Jim.
Any more comments? Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for today's meeting?
Yes.
Do you have any comments or changes? Otherwise, got to get a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the December 18 luncheon meeting? Okay, which was very short. Any comments or changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you very much. We're now down to the public invited to be heard.
He's here for the incentive.
Oh, well, why didn't he say that? He is part of the public, though.
He is.
Is he a nice guy?
He's a very nice guy.
Okay, all right, he's spoken to that. In that case, we now have an incentive for 515 Kimbard facade renovation.
Great. So John Caldwell is working on his building at 515 Kimbark, and I will have you come up and kind of talk about the changes. It's really a facade around the very top to help better integrate into an addition that they did and make some different upgrades to the building. The total project is $275,000, and they're asking for $10,000 from our DIP fund, and the finance committee has looked at the financials and approved that number based on board approval. So, you want to stand up and tell us about your project? Can you pull it up?
You have a slide?
Yeah, it'll take a second, but I'll bring the rendering up.
So I'll get started. So thank you, Executive Director McKee and Mr. Chairman of the board. I don't know if you know, it's the 515 building. It's the proximity, actually the landmark is the High Plains Bank, and we're half the way down the block on the other side of the street.
Oh, nice plug.
But the other one is references behind O'Shea's and the candy store, so, or across from Elizabeth.
We stay with the first plug. Come on.
Well, let's talk about what it looks like now.
So, yeah, so, give you just a little history. So Keith Ames, who's an architect in Longmont, who actually designed the original Civic Center, the Project 73, the Civic Center, he was the architect for that, and that's just undergone a renovation. He built this building in 73. It was a single story, and then 3 years later in 76, he added the second story, and the first story is, is most all brick. This is actually wood, and this wood. And we've actually and the buttresses. We actually went back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago and actually put tin over them, and because they were deteriorating then. So this, because of the nature of the materials, it's basically the end of its functional life. So if you go to, you have a shot of the new edition a few years ago?
Well, I don't know.
Let's see.
You can kind of see it.
Not really. Let's see. I thought. Not really.
No, this is the new.
So, the addition we did over the archway kept the same elements with the buttresses, because I think it's a very distinct look, and we don't want to get rid of that. So we're going to keep the buttress. We're going to get rid of half of it, and I think it gives it a little cleaner look. Can you?
I can't on this one.
I wasn't quite sure what that was there.
No, I can open up another version of it. I just opened it up on the website.
Bottom line is, so we'll replace, demo half the buttresses, go over the existing buttresses with basically like a cement board, and then we'll stucco. So we'll stucco the buttresses and around the window, and putting all new windows in. So basically the whole second story exterior will be redone, and it'll have a new, fresher. There you go. Thank you. You got it. Yeah. So you can. I don't know if you can tell, but it roughly half the buttress. So this would be this is Kimbark, so this is the east side and the north side. And then this would be the interior, this is our parking lot. This is the new, we call the new edition, which I think 2015. And then, so it'll all kind of flow and look similar. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
And which part are you replacing with stucco? Around the windows,
This
right?
the whole, where the buttresses are eliminated. So the buttresses and these little things, well, everything on the second story will be stucco.
Which will weather better and wear better.
Yeah. And of course, today's stucco is not, at least art is not real stucco. Stucco is it's not really sand and mortar anymore. It's more of an acrylic.
Interesting.
So that's the project. So to the average, most people, my sense is they'll think, that looks a little different. What did they do something to that? But it's not like it's gonna. We don't want to change we don't want to really change the character of the building. We just want to renovate it, and also you can see maybe get a sense here where we're removing every other one. I think it gives a little fresher look.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion on one side or the other to approve the grant? Someone needs to make a motion.
So moved.
So do I have a second? Can we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We do appreciate it.
So the
Thank
full
you.
amount,
We
10,000.
appreciate it.
Yes.
So we're, the thing, I mentioned also replacing the windows, but we're actually gonna hopefully get started. Dan Pedry's the contractor, and we think we're gonna start around the 1st of March, so.
Mhm.
Great.
And it's probably gonna be roughly a 2-month project where, I'm not sure whether he's gonna go clockwise or counterclockwise, and we'll have just give you a heads up, so if you get any pushback, because we're gonna need to get some permits, because the north side, which there's 8 parking spots on the north side. You want to pull that thing and show people so they understand what I'm talking about.
In front of the building.
It's gone.
The north side of the building.
Right, that shares really with the
Yeah,
city parking lot.
It's interesting because the DDA property and our property they're cheek to jowl, and actually the overhang on the north side is actually, we have a permanent easement, because the overhang is actually, this overhang is
Mhm.
actually over the city DDA property. We have had a permanent easement. So these spaces for week, 10 days, maybe, because of demolition construction, we're gonna have, and we've already talked to Kimberly and Del Rey about it, but yeah, we'll need those spaces for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
And then we'll deal with the city on the similar thing on the east side. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us up to any new business on 2020 work plan and the LDA board retreat.
Yes.
Yippee!
So I have a quick kind of recap of 2019. This was the work plan that we were operating on. Things in yellow are things that have made progress, but are still being done.
Still under progress.
Some of the goals under those top were to increase housing by 500 residential units, added or in the pipeline. So right now with South Main Station and the 500 Kaufman, we're at 387. I am talking with a few developers about some other projects throughout the district. None of those are ready yet, but there are people looking that will add to that total. When we're looking at marketing our downtown assets, it talked about over the next 6 years to introduce 60 new prospects. So we've been working with 29 prospects over the last year. And I'll get more data for this as well. Some of them have had leases, some of them are still looking, some of them looked and decided not to. And when we talk about facilitating kind of redevelopment or rehab of buildings, of 30 properties, if you look at the properties that have had that have pulled permits, 113 different properties in the DDA pulled 300 permits for different phases of their work. And in the last year, we incentivized 19 businesses. So we awarded $675,000 and to get almost $2 million of investment. So if you look at the next one, artisan manufacturing, we continue to work on that. Incentives, that's always going to be ongoing. Had really good numbers for our holiday promotions. So if you looked at that in the report, Last year we had about a little over 600 passports that were turned in, and this year we had 1,300. So well over doubled that. It was really, really great. In the future, I'll be looking at the difference of our increase of property tax, and then when we get those final sales tax numbers, we'll look at that. Sales tax has not grown. I think at the end of November, it had grown about 1%. However, last year it grew 15%, and so it might just be stabilizing a bit. And we might have a little bit more information about that through our market assessment as well, looking at what sectors things are happening in. We did have a content creator program where we had different grassroots folks that were creating content with us and covering different things, community events, and the art pieces. So we did add all of the murals. AIPP added some seating elements in the breezeways. We were able to facilitate or sponsor 50 different events downtown. And when we looked at our social media engagements, we had a 9.5% increase in followers on Facebook, a 53% increase on Instagram. So we spent obviously a lot more time on our Instagram, and a 27.4% increase in our web traffic. The CU students did a great job kind of looking at downtown, and some of their work helped inform our mural project and that type of thing. They are coming back to work this first half of the year, and they will be focusing on looking at those upgrades to St. Stephen's Plaza when we take out the fountain. Continue to work on the camera project. The city did appoint a new project manager that's going to be working on that to try to get through some of the things that they weren't able to figure out. We did have the rangers, which worked well and did get the parking or the smoking increase passed. So those were all good. We are still in the midst of the wayfinding, the Kaufman Street corridor planning. The one thing that did not get started was the alley planning for the 200 and 600 blocks. We are partnering with Public Works, and they were unable to move that project, so Del Rey and I are pushing really hard to make sure that that starts this year. So they had assured us that that would start this year, so we really need that to happen. And finished all of our parking lot upgrades in the 300 parking lot, which I think has made a big difference. And then all of the planning efforts, those are all continuing. Main Street Corridor Plan has been done, and so now you'll see when I talk about 2020 some of the next steps that we'd like to do. We're going to continue on that STEAM process. The feasibility study for the performing arts, the first phase of that will be presented to council on February 4th, and then we'll move into phase 2 and continuing those advanced Longmont partnerships. So I wanted to just quickly show you that, and then we have a draft of 2020. So again, property redevelopment will be a focus in our incentives, so as we're looking at land use and that type of thing. One of the things new for incentives, I've been talking to the Longmont EDP and looking to reevaluate or at least make a proposal to the board about what an incentive would look like to increase the employment base down here. We talked about doing that a few years ago, and we're looking for a partner in that. And at that time, people weren't really looking at a partnership. I think looking at some of the grant funds that they have and we have, when we say live, work, and play, we really do need to grow that daytime employee and that working base. So how can we help employers get here and make downtown their home? So that would be something new we would propose.
So which part do you say really needs to be grown? The live part, or the?
I think the live part is growing. That's the one thing that people want to do, but we aren't seeing the employment base. David Stearns and I presented to the commercial brokers of LEDP last week and really talked to them about, are they seeing employers, what would make downtown more attractive. They said we have very limited floor plates, we don't really have the right type of, so anything's going to take some rehab, and when there's no assistance with that rehab depending on the stage of the company or time or whatever. So this could be a way that I think we could put on the table, and we could tie it to the number of jobs or the earning potential or some of those other things. But I do feel like to show that we do want businesses and companies down here, I think it would be helpful. And it's a tool that we haven't had. If someone comes and they don't fit into retail conversion or making a facade, they haven't been able to have that. So.
Right.
So we would like to continue around our work with artisan manufacturing. I'm giving a tour to some folks tomorrow that I've been working with at the prospect that may have some space. So I do think that's still a niche that we'd like to continue reaching out to. Looking at a comprehensive marketing strategy, Colin has done a lot of this, but we really want to develop a year-long marketing strategy. We want to, again, continue a robust shop local holiday campaign. We're looking at things, we're going to work with our retail committee. Because of the snowstorm, all of the American Express deliveries were late for Small Business Saturday. So we have a box of Small Business Saturday stuff. So we thought maybe we would do a Christmas in July or something and have a secondary push of small business. And so looking at some of those strategies, and then grow that street team or that kind of content creator of people that are out grassroots marketing downtown. And then looking at business development, not only helping continue match businesses with space, but also looking at what a downtown is open for business campaign would look like. Looking about putting some of our marketing dollars or efforts towards Biz West or towards other places where people, to get downtown Longmont on the radar of those that are making employment choices. And so we'd like to maybe explore that. One of the things that I would say is we might have some restaurant spaces coming up, and it's not just for one person, right? We might have a few coming up, and so how can we say, hey, are you interested in having a restaurant? Downtown's a great place. If they come to us, we're just going to filter them to where the open spaces are. So we aren't brokering for one person, we aren't brokering for one spot, we're just kind of making those connections. Under our creative district, we are looking, and Mercedes doing work around what a membership would look like. We're also working with possibly our retail committee. As we launch a creative district website, it makes sense to do some of the different promotions, but what would be the baseline of what everybody could get, and then what would be membership options where businesses or individuals could pay additional for additional marketing, for enhanced listings, for that kind of stuff, as we are getting that as the kind of go-to source. We started some interesting collaborations with the city this year around the holidays and Day of the Dead, where we hosted a URL on our domain where we could put all of the city's events and all of the creative district events around these things, such as Day of the Dead at the holidays. So how could we use this creative district website and membership to keep facilitating those kind of partnerships and making this the hub of that creative activity? Colin and I are helping plan for the city's sesquicentennial, which is just fun to say, which is the 150th anniversary, which is next year, 2021. So we certainly want to make sure that, since the city started here, that downtown has a prominent role in what that celebration looks like. Our second Fridays is something that not only our retail committee wants to focus on, but our creative district advisory committee. So one of Mercedes' roles as a AmeriCorps Vista is to do things that can be duplicated. So when another Vista comes in, she can say every second Friday, here's the standardized kit of what you have to do. So she's putting together those resources. Growing the Winter Walkabout Music Showcase, which is Groundhog's Day Eve. If you don't have your tickets yet, February 1st, let me know, we'll get them for you. But great event, Colin has done a lot of work. And that went from how many venues to how many venues?
We had 12 venues last year and 35 performances, and we got 17 venues and 52 performances this year.
So tell your friends, that's 50 cents a show if you want to make them all. Really good deal.
Find that value somewhere?
Yeah.
50 cents a show,
50 cents a show.
You get a whole bunch of red tickets.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You have to rip them off. That'd be great. And art pieces. We really would like to duplicate the mural project we did on the west side with the east side on the west side. I think it got a lot of attention, a lot of buzz. It's added a lot of energy into those alleys. And that was the first question we got. Yeah, that's great. When is it going to happen over here? And so we'd like to continue that. We'll look for some grant funding as well to offset that. Again, that St. Stephen's Plaza redesign for the Metro Lab, the cameras moving forward, again, partnering with the Rangers. And one of the things that we saw a lot, especially with the Front Range project and what we've heard over and over, is that the parking lots just remain too dark. And so we have been getting some bids on what would it look like to either replace or increase that lighting. So we'll be presenting that to the board, not only as a sense of place, but as a safety measure. Finalizing the wayfinding and looking at how we enhance the color blocking throughout the district. Under infrastructure, we'll be looking at that alley planning. This is the year that we have budgeted and are working on the plans to raise that 100 block median, and so that'll be coming up out of the ground as a raised median. One of the things that I'd really like to focus on, and I'd like to talk a little bit more at the retreat, is advocating to work with the city to get the 200 block medians added. I think it's going to be odd to have a street with a raised median and then a big abyss of nothing and then the other streets. And making that connection is really critical to get people to continue going up the street. So I think that would be very important. And so looking at the Main Street Corridor Plan recommendations and how do we help get that done.
One second. So when you say the raised median of 200 block, so as we leave here, what are you talking about in the middle of the street, or what am I talking? Because we don't have it here.
We do. I mean, it's on either side. There's two raised medians. You just not directly in front. They designed it so emergency vehicles still had room to cross the street at different points if they needed
As
to.
opposed to farther up where it seems to be on the whole block except for the crossway. Yeah.
It's not all. There's breaks on each block.
Yeah, I know. But as you go this way here, the traffic coming up the hill, making the left, I don't know where we're going to be able to put that at. I'm trying to understand the design concept, because once you go down, once you get to the bottom, then you have the railroad tracks, and before that.
Yeah, so they're raising the median right before the railroad tracks, so it's just low in the ground with cobble on it. But there's nothing in the 200 block, but we had some designs through the Main Street Corridor Plan of ways and how that could work.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and you'd still have the left-hand turn lane too.
That's just a tough little stretch there. You know, that's all. For some reason, it's just a tough little stretch. Yeah. Okay.
So the bicycle dismount zone, that'll be coming back to council. We definitely want to advocate for that. That's something that we've been hearing for years needs to be done. So how do we work to advocate for that, to pass at council, and to implement that here within downtown. Parking, we are re-engaging in the studies of parking management and how we implement that with the city. And we also want to get greater awareness to our day passes. Continue with that Kaufman Street planning. We had the first meeting, and now we'll be drilling down more into property owners. Under redevelopment and reuse, finished up the 500 Kaufman Street and start on phase 2 of South Main Station, which we'll be hearing about at the retreat. And then continue with the Opportunity Zone, First and Main, the STEAM corridor, as there is the next phase of visioning. Make sure that we are working with that. Help facilitate phase 2 of the feasibility study for the Performing Arts and Convention Center. Through Advanced Longmont 2.0, we are the lead on 2 things, which is wayfinding, which we were doing anyway, and looking at the South Main Station between 3rd and 1st, and then Main and Collier, looking at how do we activate that space, what does that look like from a sense of place, infrastructure. So having a deeper dive into that, and then continuing to partner with folks. So I wanted to go through that briefly today. Number 1, to see if there was anything missing. But number 2, so then when we go to the retreat, we don't have to hammer these things out. We already kind of have an idea. Some of these things, came from things that we've budgeted from, or things that we need to continue on, as well as some new things. I met with all of the staff and really talked about what are some of the efforts that they'd personally like to move forward as well. So I just opened it up to feedback if you think there's anything missing or anything that you want us to bring more information on, or how that seems to look.
Looks like a pretty full schedule for the year.
Yeah, it's
So, things are coming along great overall because you compare that to the number of benchmarks, and things have been reached, if not exceeded, greatly in a lot of areas. So, any other comments?
Question, Kimberly, in regards to spaces that are available downtown. As businesses leave, depart, from a communication standpoint, is there any thought about, I guess, sharing that information to some level? As an example, I'm going to use the restaurant on the corner
Breakers.
down here, right? Right. That disappeared, and there was limited to no information that was communicated as far as what was going on and why. It just happened to be dark. And you drive by and it's like, wait a minute, what just happened? From that standpoint, is there any thought about how we might better communicate that type of activity? Because you're talking about bringing additional businesses or opportunities in, but yet you don't necessarily know the specifics behind. You don't have to go into all the financials, but it was there one day and the next day it was gone.
To the board or to the general public?
I'd say both.
In some instances, there are things that you can
You can share, you
share,
can't.
and then
I understand
in
that,
some
right.
instances,
No, I
there's
understand that.
probably not.
Most of the ones that go dark fast, you probably can't.
They're gone, so you can't even find out. No, actually, at the last executive meeting, we did discuss some of the things we can be doing. What took place, we're not part of that on either side. Okay, more than just the breakers. There's Ben 42 is also it's dark all now, so we're looking at a number of different ways to get that information out there. One, we came up just trying to let other restaurant owners know there's locations here. Another thing is looking at advertising through the chamber. Okay, because they actually have a full blast on every Tuesday through their email. Even trying to do something, I use the word cute. If you such as breakers. If you ever want to own a pool table, we have 9 available. Okay, so so there's things we're trying to do to make sure without trying to disseminate any information that someone goes that's wrong. So that's a little bit of a challenge.
I think part of it is as we continue to try to draw more and keep every place, full from that standpoint. In those situations where you have those gaps, such as that, for someone looking to come in, what type of message might that be sending? As you see that, I mean, in one breath, you have all this activity, and the next breath you go, wait a minute, what's happening here? From that standpoint, I'm looking at that from the outside,
Right.
versus inside.
But I think in the meeting we determined you shared whether there's 5 restaurant spots, but if 6 months ago there was none available.
Right.
See, so you can't. It's hard to. But if someone came through today and go, oh, it's dark over here, and what's happening here, But restaurants do have a lot of turnover at the same time. So.
And 2 of those would be South Main Station, that is just not
Right.
ready for a tenant
Sure.
yet.
Right.
That type of
And
thing.
they are actually the easiest spaces to lease.
Yeah.
So,
The restaurants are.
So I think I do think I can answer questions or be able to communicate openings to the board. We do keep what has available space on our website. I don't know how comfortable I would feel doing public announcements of businesses that close, because it's kind of the flip side too. I usually have a good sense, not always, but often have a good sense on what happens. So as we're talking to people, and even when you walk by, I can say, so this building is purchased by someone, they've been working on it, it's slated to be whatever. However, that doesn't always show in the public, so I do know exactly what you're talking about. So I think that's good feedback, and we can kind of figure out how to balance that.
Okay, that's it. So part 2 then. We have
Okay.
our board retreat.
Yes, board retreat. I printed out these agendas because I don't know if they weren't in the copy. I mean, they were online, but they weren't in the copy that Emily made copies of. So this is a draft agenda for our retreat. I'm still looking for a location. I wanted to have it at South Main Station, but there just wasn't a room kind of ready enough to host us, and it's probably too chilly for that wonderful rooftop patio, so.
Wait, whoa, we're tougher than that.
Are we tough?
Yeah, well, somewhat.
Might not be as tough as you. You know, I know we just were there, and I thought it through, maybe we wouldn't have had it, but we could maybe have it in that room at 300 Suns where you could kind of pull that door shut. So if you guys are amenable to going back there, might be a good place to have it. So.
Isn't that the restaurant spot? So I know if we started in the morning, they probably wouldn't have anyone there, but we would go into the lunch hour.
Yeah, I think they have those doors so they can reserve it as a party room. You know what I mean? So they can shut the doors.
Right.
And so.
I don't know what the cost would be. That's the only thing. Yeah.
We could get a good deal.
Well, you could. Well, in that case.
We could look into it unless anyone's like really opposed to going back there. Okay. So we wanted to start it off 8 in the morning, and then again we wanted to do what I'm calling kind of lightning updates, so you can kind of get up to speed as to where everything is. This will be after the council retreat, so an update on kind of the STEAM next steps and the city council retreat. Some of these which you've had updates on, just really next steps, what you can plan on seeing. So on the Main Street corridor plan, on the Kaufman Street corridor plan, a more detailed as to what we'll be doing. I know we all know about these projects. RTD and First and Main, and then affordable housing. Baxter had asked to really get an update from Kathy about what affordable housing looks like throughout the city, kind of a benchmark of where we are now and what are still the needs. And then just doing some fun, quick exercises about looking at what kind of infrastructure improvements are needed or are missed as you're looking at this area. And then going into an economic development update, another quick update from the chamber in Advanced Longmont 2.0. And then looking at development, I did talk to Brian Baer. He's interested in bringing to the board a more solid proposal for what he wants to do in phase 2. And so I think it would be very good information to have. And then a benchmark on new designs. I have been working with 500 Kaufman Street that has gone back and done quite a few design revisions. I'm actually going down to Denver on Monday to their office to look at different materials. So if anybody wants to come down and look at materials, I'm sure we could
That sounds exciting.
Accommodate.
Yeah.
Going
concrete, brick,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. If not, I'll take nice pictures. But kind of an update of where we are and looking at timing there. We are doing, kicking off that historical assessment for the Elks, and so we can just do a quick time frame as to what that's going to be looking like. And then Aaron Fostick and I can talk about what we're going to be doing that work around the 200 block. Take a break and then do an update about the feasibility study that council will be getting, but we can kind of just touch base on that and what that means to us. And then David Starnes will be kind of giving us a snapshot of that market analysis, and we'll have discussions around the findings. That's a project that we've been working on. I had told him to, instead of finalizing the report, we can get feedback, see if the board thinks that there's gaps, see if there's more questions that we have, and then we'll finalize it after that. But I think it'll give us a lot of good information. Go into a lunch break, and then start having a discussion around either LEDA or GID boundary expansions. What does that look like? How does that even happen? Where do we go from here? And then talk about what we would do in 2020 to move that effort forward, start aligning those for those to work. And then we'll have a quick February board meeting. I have been very delinquent, which I apologize to Jim, of getting him drafts of our IGAs, but I will do that in the next 2 days, and hopefully we'll get them through so we can vote on them at our February meeting, and then we can add or make changes to that work plan. So I wanted to see how you all felt about that draft, if there's things missing, if there's things that you don't want to talk about or feel like you have enough information on.
One, are we going to talk about signage and where that is?
Yes, we can add that for sure.
Okay. It seems like it's been a while already since we looked at the pictures.
Yes.
You know, when is that going to be completed, more importantly? maybe just for the purpose of the agenda, you say here in D1, the South Main Station, maybe we want to put phase 2, add that in there to clarify that. So then under the development update also on number 2, the 500 Kaufman Street, Justin is going to talk about the county portion of it.
Mhm.
Can we have someone from Burton talk about their development portion of that?
You'll have to ask them.
Yeah, okay.
Because Justin will cover the parking structure
And the housing.
and the housing, so we should have a third part. That'll be great. And probably the only other thing is to add some more time so that we stay on task.
At the times, yeah.
Yeah, so we can
Okay.
break it apart, so we just
Yep.
stay on task. So.
Okay.
Do any of the initiatives, the city plans and initiatives, or and those sorts of things, are they going to require a bond election at any point in the future?
That's a good question. Not Main Street Corridor Plan, not Kaufman Street. I don't know about RTD. No.
Station?
Yeah.
No, not for all. So we're supposed to get money.
Okay.
And they won't have a bond election earlier.
I don't know how they're getting right about that election. But our share, we're about half funded for the whole project from the city's share.
For the RTD.
For the city share.
Right.
First meeting.
Okay.
So we should be fully funded by the time we get around to meeting all that money.
How is that funded?
Or however we can scrape and save.
Okay.
So we've been doing a lot of money from the general fund the last couple of 19 and 20.
And then I guess the only thing up in the air, which we don't even know what that would look like, would be if steam, anything in that steam corridor. But I mean, I don't think anyone's there yet. Right? Did you say that's right?
No funding identified yet.
Yes. Is there any bond issues that you know that would be coming up anyway, not in the DDA?
I mean, the council's gonna be talking about what they're gonna do this year. It's still gonna have their retreat next month, so nothing set for sure. There's a possibility, as we've talked about, the street fund sales tax was removed the renewal, so that they'd be able to do bonding from the street fund for some quiet zones and that recreation was talked about and discussed again as well. So.
Anything else?
Anything else? Anybody has any? We have what, a week or two? Anything comes up before our meeting? We actually have a little more time than that.
Month.
A month, so we're good to go. That much lead time. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's great. We don't need to approve this agenda, do we?
No, no.
But maybe on our, because we will have a board meeting afterwards, so we'll just go through the same process. So this is good. All right. Any old business? Yes.
Pop up Longmont.
Pop up. Pop up.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about it.
Our first pop-up Longmont was great. We thought it was great. A lot of activity. It was fun to watch the retail process. We will be getting a follow-up report that I'll kind of look at to help future folks. I've toured a few people through the place, but it's not surprising that January, February, March is not the time people are ready to jump feet first. So we've been working with the museum. We were able to get some of their historical photos as well as all of the historical photos that we have around here. So we'd like to maybe do a nice historical photo display so people could kind of walk in as an exhibit. I've been talking to Violet Press, who's right next door, who is willing to design some note cards and a historical kind of little poster print that we would be able to sell. So there's still that kind of retail or sales component. I'm not expecting this to not get through the park, but you could still buy something, kind of a commemorative limited edition of these cards. And there are prints available. We had talked about possibly having some prints of the photos, but they take less than a week to get from the museum, so we could have a station where we could just order it for them and then it would be delivered. So then instead of buying an inventory of pictures that we may not sell, they could get whatever size they wanted and whatever mounting they wanted. And so I just wanted to run that by you. I think it is a pretty good use of the space in the interim. I did meet with a company today that is looking for it, but they want it later in the year, so we'll continue to kind of reach out. We did get an application that I have to vet, but it is a coffee shop. We had said before, no food service. So I just wanted to see if the board wanted us to pursue that, or if we still think food service is not a good idea.
What?
I would say probably.
I say probably not, but.
Yeah. I feel like that would be just a little bit too hard.
Well, it's not within our concept.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
So.
So just wanted to run that by you. Okay, so that is where we are with Pop-Up Longmont. Just wanted to touch base and give you an update.
All right. But just overall, the Sox went quite well, or would you say great, or?
They went great.
Uh-huh.
I thought they went great.
The only other
They
thing-
admitted that they did not do enough marketing on their end, and so the fact that they really did not do a whole lot of marketing and the buzz that it had and the folks that were coming in for it was, I thought, pretty impressive. And again, we heard a little bit of feedback of folks that said, oh, you really talked about them more than us or whatever, which I feel like we were very balanced in our marketing. We did features on all kinds of businesses. But again, my answer to that is we always want people to come down for a reason, and we're always sending them to other places. We certainly don't want this to be, we're not saying just come here and go home. If they can kind of get up and down the streets for retail, it's just giving them that reason to return. And so that's why it's the short-term leases and that type of thing. And so we'll vet that through a little bit more. And I do think it was really a win-win. Just to update you, we sold 937 gift cards last year, so just a little under 1,000, which is, I think, amazing. We sold 700 and some last year, so it was a huge increase. And it was $47,000 worth of gift cards. And so as people came in to buy gift cards, they saw them, or people came in and saw it. So it was a really good cross as well, I think, for that retail use.
So my next question was, how was the foot traffic? And so that's something that generated also.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, some days it was slower, and other days it was crazy. And I think it is a reality that there are less people still on this block than the 500 block, and so when they were kind of scheduling their hours around what they did at Scrumptious, it was probably a little bit too long, because you're not getting those later night dinner traffic that are walking around. Again, so lessons learned. I think it's great to be open, but they were open later probably than they needed to, and those last hours probably, I wouldn't recommend to another person who's just trying to get up and running if they have to pay staff. But again, it was a good partner to have, and it was interesting to watch.
And then was there any impact upon you guys' day-to-day work schedule, having the pop-up here? Did it make any difference at all?
No. Not at all, really.
Okay, all right.
It was very non-intrusive. They were very respectful. That first day I thought, oh gosh, what have we done? And then, by day 3 it was like, oh no, this is great. And so, yeah, it was just a
Uh-huh.
really good relationship.
It's kind of nice having somebody watching the front door. Like, I don't have to pop out of my office.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Just come tell me if they want a gift card or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say a handful of time did we have shoppers before 10 o'clock that we had to say, feel free to browse, but you know, if you want to buy something, you'll have to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was
With the
not.
pop-up socks.
Yeah,
Socks.
and then one of us could just, and Mercedes was here a lot, so she could just. So
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't a problem at all.
Okay. Any more follow-up questions? Anything like that? Okay. We are about to have a financial update on a retail conversion appropriation.
Yes, so I mentioned in December that we had 4 businesses in the pipeline for a retail conversion grant that we've been working with. They haven't applied yet. However, hopefully they all will. And if we gave them the full $15,000, all 4 of them, it would be a total of $60,000. Currently, our retail conversion grant program has $16,676. It's been I feel like it's been very successful and a good tool to work with those that are taking non-retail generating space and making it into retail generating. And so we were hoping that we could add $100,000 into that incentive fund. A while back, we had allocated a portion of money for incentives, so that money is allocated. It wouldn't take additional money out of what we have been using as our number that we have left for TIF. It would just be taking that $100,000 and putting it into that incentives for the retail conversion. So I wanted to see if you were interested in appropriating whenever the next appropriation is. We have money to cover what we're doing. None of them will come in
okay.
and out before the next appropriation, so I'm not worried about that. But I just, since we knew about it, I thought if you wanted to do it, we could do so. So whenever that happens, it can move forward.
So do you want a board motion to approve $100,000 into the appropriation account?
Yes.
All right.
With the incentive fund.
Unless I have some questions, can I get a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that sounds good. And then we have some carryover funds from 2019.
Yes, as hard as we tried, we weren't able to get everything accomplished and money spent in 2019. And so I do have a recommendation of some carryover money. So the first is $4,000. We, as part of our chamber lease, our rent was very low, but we paid a pro rata share of the taxes. So we're estimating that at $4,000, but we couldn't pay that until 2020 when they get billed. And so that money, we still need a conference room table. It's interestingly very hard to find a conference room table, so we're continuing to look for one or maybe having one built for the size that we need. And then we would like to get a code lock on the front door. We're getting one on the back door, but we'd like to also get one on the front door, so then you could come in with a key code, which will help as we have pop-up tenants or whatever. When they leave, we can just change those codes as opposed to worrying about did they make a copy of the key or anything like that. You know, we need to have a better front door sign. That's the one thing we heard time and time again, that people did not know that the DDA was in here from Main Street. And so we would like to look at what some type of front signage would be. We did not get the disposal, that type of thing for the kitchen. And we had talked about doing some cleanup and landscaping around the back porch. So this is not new money. This is money that was in our 2019 budget that we didn't spend, that we'd like to roll over to the 2020 budget. So that would be in our operating account, and in our A&E account, we did have $4,000 budgeted for new banners that we held because we want to tie them into the wayfinding. Also $5,000 for the design of those banners. That's not part of the wayfinding. It's taking the concept of wayfinding and then drilling down. So $5,000 for that. $1,000 for an additional Adobe subscription, and then $4,000 for some downtown awareness ads that weren't completed. So as we talked about, maybe bringing back a proposal to the board of what some of those downtown is open for business ads would look like, that would be available funds for that. So again, this is all money that we had in 2019 that I'm just asking if we can carry over those funds into our accounts for 2020. We're happy with that. Just need a motion and ask Jim to do that.
I have a motion. Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. It's amazing how much you keep finding money.
I keep not spending it, spending it.
All of a sudden, all things keeps changing.
And so we'll probably have year-end financials in a few months, I think, once all the books get closed.
In a few months? That long?
Come on over and help us out.
Bless you. Well, nowadays we just bring on more staff.
Right?
Okay, item number 10. We have an executive director report, which is going to consist of some project updates.
Yeah, so I think I actually spoiled all of these when I was talking about the 2020, but 500 Kaufman, they have really worked on the design. We are going through the first draft of the garage. I was able to meet with Nori and Justin. The first draft, which Jim Wardell is gonna agree to be the partner to kind of look through these documents. Our attorney is looking through them, and the city has their own counsel that's looking through on their end. Here's a question I have, Jim, that I should have asked earlier, but since we are actually, work on behalf of the IGA for the GID, doesn't that also mean that it makes more sense for me to be in those conversations if the city attorney is looking at that through the lens of the GID? Yeah. So I think they had a meeting today that I wasn't invited to, but maybe.
It's Katie that was that.
Okay. See, but maybe we could jointly point that out. Because I know they don't always love when I point it out, but I just think that makes sense. Okay. So again, looking at those, one of the things that was inherently flawed with the agreement is it really talked about how the county would be the developer and they would get our money, yet it didn't talk about the future of what that garage looks like. Those might be alternate agreements, but I did say I would not recommend that we're going to sign this agreement without negotiating all of those agreements, because those agreements are critically important to the investment. And so we'll all be working on those. Like I said, I did see the design. I will be seeing materials. It is improved from what it was. I think there were still some things that could definitely go back to the drawing board, but hopefully we'll be getting those flushed out. South Main Station, I do have a facade agreement, and Joe is going to help look through those. Our attorney has been working on the facade agreement. Again, those two other buildings will be coming online, and I think they're looking for their reimbursements towards the end of February, beginning of March. So we also have some certified cost documents, and Brian Schumacher has always been the partner in planning that helps goes through those. So he and I have been working on that as well. The IGAs, I admitted my delinquency. I'll get those to Jim. I don't really foresee, I'm going to really go through them, but too many changes based on last year. I think last year they were pretty well vetted out. I've already worked with the Parks Department on kind of the maintenance and what that looks like, and I don't think there's any problems or things that will need readdressed. Those capital improvement projects, the capital improvement budget is usually due May 1st. Is that right, May 1st? Yeah, okay. So again, we'll talk about it a little bit more in the retreat, but I do want to start aligning partners on those 200 medians and things like that, so we can start to try to get that into the process and get that joint funding. I just really think that's such a critical piece. And then we had previously budgeted for a cultural plan. We have money in our construction fund for a cultural plan. We were looking for city match dollars to do that for not only the creative district, but the whole citywide. And it looks like we have been able to get those funds aligned. So that is something that we will be looking at. And I meant to add that, I'm sorry, I need to add that onto the work plan as well. So you'll be hearing more about that. I think it will mesh nicely with the different feasibility studies that are happening, to really look at what does arts and culture look like across the entire city, and then what are people's roles and how do we advance some of these goals. So I think that'll be really important. So other than that, I weaved in everything else I wanted to say at different times. So if you have any questions on the report that I submitted or anything, I'm happy to answer those.
Other topics were previously covered.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we have some items from staff.
Did my first weather check for February 1st, and knock on wood all day, but sunny and 60, so.
So
We'll see.
perfect.
We'll see. It was great last year, so hopefully.
They're only 50 cents a ticket.
Exactly.
See, so who can complain
Very
about the
low risk.
weather?
Yeah, very low risk.
So great.
Anything else?
Anything? Nope.
Okay. Well then, do we once again have any board member comments? Well,
Not on board.
that's all the board. And in that case, we are adjourned.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, and go Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So you
yeah.
wearing red every day into the big game?
No, I can do that. I'm pretty confident. One team in red will win.
One team in red, that's right.
Joe Montana's former team will win.